So I want to say warm welcome to Magdalena Weinstein. I'm very, very grateful to have you today here for the Generation Change interview. It's about the mental health of our families. And I want to invite you to introduce yourself because, yeah, everybody wants to know who you are for sure.
Thank you, Daniela. It's a pleasure to be with you in conversation. Magdalena Weinstein. I was born and raised for 30 years in Chile, Santiago. And that had a lot of impact, obviously, in my life because I was born in 1974 and I was in dictatorship for 16 years. So that's a piece, of the collective trauma that my nation had. And during that time, living in Chile was also very connected and familiar. And we've been talking about the importance of collective society, growing up in a collective society where the group is sometimes more important than the individual and all that. So I grew up with all that. And I came to the United States in 2004. My background first was in design. I did 6 years of studies in between architecture and graphic design, and then I work in agencies into communication and how to put into writing and words and graphics and symbols and meaning to transfer information that concise, very brief or resumed, or I don't know the other word, but so that it could be transferred to a large group of people and easily synthesis of something, So that transferred to everything I do in my life. And I have a big background in yoga and Buddhism. I don't see myself as a Buddhist because that's not my ancestral background. My ancestral background is Christian and Jewish at the same, both sides. But
this is a huge resource for you, right? The ancestral issue also touches.
It's very important to follow that direction instead of Buddhist tradition or yoga tradition, which are Asian, and I respect them and I love them because I learned so much about the expansive self and the capacity to tolerate bigness. Which is a kind of a goal in somatic work. I mean, eventually we do all want to be able to have capacity to hold more instead of less, instead of shrinking. And so there's a lot of training that in Buddhist traditions. And I did mostly Zen and Tibetan, both traditions. And with yoga also, we're always looking for expansion of the breath and how to work with the expansion in the body, more space, building more space in the body. So that, in the later work I am doing right now, that was very important. And that was from 2002 until now, basically. So it's a long time. But like I said, right now, I let go of those traditions as mine. I don't utilize them. I mean, I have them as my core, in my core. I own them now, but I don't say that I'm a yoga teacher or a Buddhist. I don't utilize that. I let go of that about 4 years ago.
So what are you now? What do you say?
I have, thank you. I have more interest in my ancestral traditions, the Chilean indigenous traditions or the Latin American traditions, collective traditions that are connected with the earth and the ancestry, and the Jewish tradition as well. And parts of the Christian, parts of the Bible are very important for me, some of the saints I know, and I know what they mean, and they're also in the Jewish tradition, so like the Old Testament. Yeah. So there's a lot there in all of that I own now more, that I feel more comfortable with. I'm not in any way religious, but and then around 2008, from 2009 to 2018, I was part of I started getting into something called process coaching in 2009, and I was a practitioner for a while, and then I was a coach, then I was a trainer, and then I was a teacher of trainers on those 10 years. And at the end of it, and during that, we did NLP and we did hypnosis and we did a lot of constellation work, family constellation, which is very ancestry oriented and very family oriented work. And I'm taking all of that because it's all important. I still consider myself that I do NLP. I don't use hypnosis as much, but I do a lot of work around constellation because it's incredible work. Yeah. So I kind of own that too. And then at some point I realized that it was sort of cultish. To me, it was sort of cultish. And then it came in the open in 2020 that it was actually a cult. So even though it utilized hypnosis and NLP and constellation in a good way, the head of process coaching actually was what is it called, like the leader of a cult. I mean, he was acting like a leader of a cult, utilizing these techniques to brainwash people, basically. Wow. Yeah. Mostly brainwashing the teachers, brainwashing the trainers in the smaller circle of the bigger community. Yeah. So that's part of mine. And during that time, I was exploring somatic experiencing. Around 2014, 15, my mom died. And I was exploring what could be effective to work some of the maybe trauma that I felt it was ancestral, but it was also in the collective of my society where I grew up, but it was also because she transferred to me some of the things that I felt. My dad had died in 2003, so I already had both my parents dead, and I had a more like a commitment to, okay, well, I have to do, it will be interesting to do deeper healing here. And process coaching didn't feel like enough, but I was exploring the possibility of doing something more deeper, like somatic experiencing. And it took me until 2018 to start studying seriously. So it hasn't been that long, actually. So in 18, I started with beginner 1, the model, and then I finished the program. And then like I told you, I retook the program in Spanish a year and a half ago, and in a cohort in Argentina with a Latin American cohort, because I've been living in the United States, which I haven't said, but I immigrated to the United States in 2004. And there's a lot of layers into immigrating from Chile to United States as a Latin American.
And you realize racial trauma as well, right?
Right, realizing that it took me years to even realize, oh, I am signing this little square that says Hispanic or Latino American, and I'm Latino. So I am classified here as different than white when I thought I was just white. I didn't think about my race, basically, when I was Chilean. And then I had to think about my race. And then I realized, oh, other people are thinking about my race as much as this little square is saying it. Other people also have a square. They mark, she's Latina, she's Hispanic. So I started realizing that later on. By 2000, I don't know, mid 2010, I started realizing there's something different about me than that. I'm also coming from a society that is not individualistic, and that was very kind of forcing me to become more individualistic based, or to have more individualistic based relationships. And raising kids, I had kids, so during that time, so raising kids in this society that is individualistic as well, and it's so different than where I grew up. Yeah. So at this point, after that, and realizing that I'm still here, but I have kind of a commitment with this part of the process of being the trauma of immigration, which is a trauma of everybody, but it's more present when you're recently or your first generation immigrant than if you're second or third or fourth, which basically most people are, unless you're original from some area, which some people are, but mostly not. Most people, at least in the United States, nobody is. Unless you're indigenous, really nobody else is. Everybody's an immigrant.
Yes, that's true.
In a lot, and in Europe too. Most people are immigrants in Europe.
We're not present. We're not aware of that, right?
It's it's under the iceberg or under couple.
Yeah. I was so impressed from your graphic, and I will share it under the interview, your graphic about these rings of chronic, complex and acute trauma. And we all have lots of pieces, and we are not aware of that, at least here in Europe. It's only coming right now, growing awareness of the own trauma, of the individual trauma, of the collective, all the stuff you mentioned. And at the same time, we live in a crisis, in a stress situation. And the kids are really, they have really to carry a lot of this weight right now, is my feeling. They're getting a really bad situation in mental health, and that's about what this summit is. And my question is, what can we do in the families? And there's not the possibility for everybody now to do a SE education and to go for therapy. There are no places, but what can we do to gain awareness and to go step by step to collect all these puzzles and to start a collective healing process? That's such a big question for me, and so only so few people I can ask. So that's why I want to ask you. You have so much experience and your long way you described.
Thank you. I would say, of course, the most important reminds me of my current mentor, Kathy Kane, which I really love her work. And I really appreciate having her as a mentor for the last whole year in more advanced somatic work. And it's about alignment, and it's not about them. It's about the parents. So when we're not in alignment, and alignment is a difficult concept. And maybe you can share the graphic about orientation, the proprioception. Because alignment, it's about the relationship in between the environment, my physical body, and the inside of myself, like the center of the spine. So it's, alignment is a relationship, piece. And when we're not in alignment, and it also has, it's almost like the theory of Einstein, like about space and time. It's about space, but it's also about time. Because if we're not aligning right now in between these three places, which is really difficult, and now back to the Buddhists or back to the yoga, if we're not in the here and in the now, in this space, where are we? And what are they learning from us? To not be here now, aligning in between these three areas, and are they in the future? Are they in the past, like we've been? So wherever we align, we're like what is it? We are the north, south, east, west, the compass.
The compass.
We're the north star or the compass in the family, and especially a woman, or the not necessarily the woman, but the feminine energy in the family, which doesn't need to be female born, but we are if the feminine in the family, which could be two people, is not the compass of being in the center of all the centers, in between the north, the south, the east and the west, their indigenous tradition, in between the up and the down, in between the future and the past. If we're not in the center, they're not going to be in the center, because they're in our compass. I'm not saying that's easy to do, but it's about orientation. Because if they're having a crisis, which is a crisis of space and time, usually it's about the future or the past, or they're triggered about the outside, or triggered about their inside or their physical body. If it's one of those and we're not oriented, how can we give them any advice? How can we be the compass again? To say, honey, right now you're fine, when we're not fine because we're not here. We're just like, it's all fake. Doesn't make sense. And this is what happens a lot. But most people, because my clients too, when we're working around this orientation, so is your physical body forward or backwards? Really, like, are you really in the future right now? Yeah, I'm thinking about anxiety stuff, and I'm thinking about what bad thing will happen next with COVID or the war or the environmental crisis. So if people are futures thinking, they're not in the center, they're not in alignment. And so how is the kid gonna feel okay I'm a compass in the future? And let's be honest, this is all about energy and gravity. I mean, trees that are future centered, I mean, trees that are facing forward are going to fall forward, and the trees that are facing back are they going to fall backwards or sideways. And the trees that are alignment, like the good redwood with the good roots, is going to live 2,000 years. Honest, right? Like a little pine that is like barely there, it's going to last 20 years or less. You know, it's going to have diseases. But a good redwood tree, the thing about redwoods is that they connect with each other.
And under
you know that they have like an under roots. Did
That's
you know
beautiful.
Sequoias? They have this root system that connects. They have communication in between them because their roots are incredibly long. Yeah. That's the only reason why they last so long. Yeah. Right. So if we want to have that, we gotta have a root in the center. I think it's fun. I think it's very fun to realize, oh my God, I can just start working on my alignment. So I don't have to be so worried about the kid or the environment. I have to work on my alignment around this planet that's floating in the middle of the universe. I have to work on my relationship with that.
And that's actually so easy. I get you totally. Well, my oldest child was severely in distress, mental distress with anxiety and everything 2 years ago. And I had learned all the somatic techniques, but I didn't do it every day on a daily basis, on an hourly basis. But when I started to really align myself, she went on her way and she's thriving now. I think it's really the key. But how do you do that with your clients? Because for most mothers or parents, fathers, it's such a hard step to get out of the thinking, to get out of the constant interpreting, reframing and planning and whatever, to really do this simple body work, simple centering work, simple alignment work. How do you do that with your clients? How do you get them on this way? Or what can you recommend?
I'm gonna do the same metaphor with the tree because I like that one. Yeah. So there's many ways to meet a redwood or a forest. There's many ways to enter a forest. I mean, there's all these places, possibility you can walk, you can bike ride to it, or you can drive and then walk, or if there's a river, you could be kayaking through. So there's many entries for alignment. There's not just one. So it's not like, oh, I'm going to sit in Zen position and I'm going to have alignment. No, because you could be future projecting even though you're sitting. Yeah. Because there's so many ways, we usually find the best one right now. The best one right now will switch later on, but it's the best one right now. If the person, and as a simple example, if the person is, let's say they're very worried about the environment, they're very scared of the environment, like maybe they feel threat around them because they're a person of color, or they're Black, and they're immigrants. And that's a very typical exteroceptive kind of trauma. You're thinking constantly, if I go to the street, I'm gonna blah, blah, blah. So it's hard to align when you're constantly in threat. Yeah. So then that's not the best place to align. The environment is not the best place to align, but there's other places to align. They can align in the bone, they can align in the spine, they coming back to, okay, so don't go outside right now in your mind, but come back to your body. Yeah. So and the more you come back to your body and come back maybe to your spine, or different points of entry again. So it could be the spine, but it could be the skin. The skin is a beautiful point for everybody. That's what people love, be in touch, because it's a communication point, it's an orienting point. Yeah. The skin, if you think about skin, it's a beautiful, gigantic organ. It's like the eyes can see the skin, can feel the way here. So you can orient to the skin, and then you're back from the external travels to my skin. Yeah. And with that in mind, maybe they can go to the store without future projecting or whatever, that it is something that, and connecting more with their sense of, but I can be in my skin no matter what, right? Or I can be in my spine, in my, I don't know, in the pelvic floor or somewhere. It takes time. Not everybody is able to withstand holding attention somewhere that feels maybe neutral or okay, because they're so used to focusing the attention in everything wrong around, right? So for somebody that has a lot of pain and is distracted because of pain, that's not the best place. We wouldn't be focusing on muscle or bone or whatever. We just gotta switch. Okay, what about outside of that? Or inside, deeper inside? Is there pain in like the, I don't know, the kidneys or somewhere like that? Or what part of the body doesn't have pain, right? So we're not trying to get a lot of time where it's uncomfortable. We're wanting to switch. And then when there's more capacity, because they're more in alignment now, because we're not in alignment when we don't feel okay. When we don't feel okay, we're out of alignment somehow, because we're trying to move away, we're contracted, we're in the front or in the whatever. So once we're in alignment, we can come back to that place that doesn't feel great, because we can shift to be in this other place that feels out of alignment only for a little bit to understand it more, and then come back to alignment. It's almost like we have to have a home that feels centered before we start kind of going into the clearing the forest, clearing the path towards the redwood sort of thing. Yeah, we don't launch into clearing the forest before having a place to come back to, because there's a lot of stuff that could happen in the clearing of the forest. Does that make sense?
It makes totally sense for me, right? Yes, totally. What do you think? How can we do this collective shift? Because we don't have in Germany, Switzerland, we are not connected to this ancestral traditions anymore. I think they nourish a lot where they are still alive, and they help an easy access to this alignment, but we don't have that anymore. I think we have this unaware connection to the trauma, and we don't even see it, and we have really kind of lost the compasses doing anything. And what I think now is maybe we just need some simple education, widespread education about this, and everybody can find his own entry or whatever to ask himself, how can I be aligned now, whatever. But how do you do that? I mean, is there a movement in America? Is it growing bigger? There's much more awareness of ACEs and all this stuff. Is it coming to the collective mind slowly? And is there a change, or?
It's probably coming through the collective mind more often because there is maybe more awareness of immigration,
right?
Because it's a lot of immigration here, and then that makes you remember the ancestry. I think just having the awareness of what you don't have makes you remember what was that, and then you turn around, you look at the back, the ancestry is there on the back, like, oh, I live in the United States and I'm from Africa, and you turn around, you're facing Africa suddenly, and then you see your culture. And it's not like so easy to digest the fact that we have ancestry as well. So even though we need to work with it, it's not, and again, it's going to be very similar to the clearing of the forest, because it's like unseen, untried, untouched territory, and walked territory, and you got to clear it to get there. And in the way, there's a lot, right? To go to the ancestry, there's a lot. But there's one thing that the ancestry also can be helpful with. Not all the ancestry, but the good ancestors sort of can be part of the alignment. And that's something that we don't think about often, is that they also would like to be supportive of our alignment.
Yes.
So a cultivation of some ritual, something that makes us every day or every other day or something, or at least weekly, connect with this group of people or one person or one symbol of the ancestry is pretty great root for the center of the person, because it centers us as in the family as well, because now the family is not just me, the four people or the two, whatever, how many are in the dynamic, like a mom and a child, or mom, dad, and child, two children, or two moms and I don't know, all these mixtures. But it's more about all these other people that were here before the ones that are now here, and even the descendants that are coming after. So having the alignment with all of those points, again, space and time, right? Like I'm here, there was people before me in this alignment, and there are people in the future of this alignment.
Beautiful. That's really beautiful.
It's pretty simple though. It's pretty simple, but it needs to be like kind of done over and over again and taken seriously, I would say, very seriously. The bringing the allies, the ancestors, the ally ancestors, the good ancestors, and the good ancestry, finding, and I think that's kind of maybe a way to reclaim, is to reclaim the good ancestry, and what isn't good, change it. You know, I have clients from India and clients from, like I said, Africa, and what's the bad part of the ancestry and what's the good part of the ancestry, right? Because culturally, I mean, there's a lot of bad things about these places, these collective, very ancient cultures, but at the same, because there's a lot of abuse and patriarchy and all that stuff, and castes and class and all that. And so that needs to go. And what can stay is other things that are part of the culture, like I don't know, in the Indian tradition, there's so many good things, but there's so many terrible things, oppressive things. In Africa.
Forget to address the good things. And I love that you say we have to take that serious. It needs commitment. It's not just coming back easily without we do anything. Yeah, I love that. And also I love the capacity you spoke about several times, really, to build that capacity to be able to whatever, hold this stuff or let it go and realize that, feel it. That's a big part, and it's difficult. It's not only easy. It sounds so easy, but it's probably a lot of work for everybody, everybody to do for our kids. Yes.
Finding the discernment in the ancestry back. And sometimes in constellation work, there's a lot of that, what's hidden.
Yeah.
What was hidden is troubling now, because if you hide anything, it's going to come worse. Like Carl Jung talks a lot about the dark shadow or the golden shadow, but it comes stronger almost. So not hiding any more things, but talking about them, like, hey, there's this in the family. There were slave traders in our family, or your grandparent committed suicide, and I want you to know.
Yes.
But that's not the only thing in the family, but I want you to know this because I don't want it to be silent anymore. That's not it. Or they died in Auschwitz. I don't want to hide it from you anymore, because if I hide it, it will play in your field. It's still in the family field. And that's part of the alignment, is committing to the good ally ancestry, gathering the resources of the earth. I mean, there's all these elements in the earth that can be supportive of the same process, and working towards alchemy, of these things that are so painful, right? Like suicide or slavery or Auschwitz, right? Or World War I, or even back in time, Roman Empire. You think about the history of cutting heads and like having kings and queens and peasants and slaves. It's a lot. There's a lot in the history of everybody. So starting to look at the tree and stop hiding it, like stop shying away from it, and then seeing the strength of having kings and queens in your ancestry, and at the same time realizing, but there's also a lot of darkness in that, right? There's a lot of light and a lot of darkness. Or slavery family, there's a lot of light and a lot of darkness in both, so
it's beautiful.
It is beautiful.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
To focus on that light, to really have it both, to hold it both, and to let the
create alchemy go. And there is possibility when we work here and now with what we got, which is the body and the environment around us, and there's these 3 layers. Is super simple, but it can be done. But it has to be done through here in the body. That cannot be done in the mind.
Right.
The mind it's not gonna, you can only work it in the frontal lobes.
Yeah.
Because that's not the only part of the body. That's only one piece of the body.
Yes.
A lot of the trauma is inherited and passed on through genes everywhere, not just in the frontal lobes,
Yeah.
right? Or in behavior, not just in the behavior, it's in the fascia, it's in the skin, it's in the eyes, it's in the ears, it's everywhere.
Yes.
It's in the throat, it's in the lungs. Somebody drowned, it's in my lungs now. If it was my ancestor, or if it happened to me, or my mom, or whatever, it's in my lungs now. It doesn't go away. So,
wow.
Right?
Putting
things in the box does not work anymore. It did. We thought that it would work to put them all in the Pandora box, but now we have to. Now it's open. Pandora box is open. So we have to deal with the contents.
Yes. Thank you. It's a lot to digest, Magdalena. So easy spoken, but it's so profound what you say, and I think it's opening a door for this situation, and I hope lots of people will be touched from your words. That's very important. Before we close, and I think you have lots to do today, my precious time with you is over. Would you give us some, coming back to daily life, to you live your family life as well next to your wonderful work? Would you give us some advice? Is there something you want to address to the families of these days, to the parents who care and to do this work maybe more and more? About you were talking, how do you manage your life, and do you have some tips, some rituals, some secret to share how we can get through these times?
Yeah, a couple of things that I was going to mention is, one of them is, the word is titration, or dose, the right dose. Yeah. So thinking that this work needs to happen right now and 100%, and I just got to start right in this second, it doesn't work for the body, because the body can only take so much water and so much food. So the same with this kind of work. It can only take so much, can only digest so much, can only integrate so much. And usually, like on homeopathy, less is more. Less is always more. No necessity to overdo it or big changes. Small is the way. Small little pieces, right? So small rituals, 10-minute rituals, 5% hope in change, 5% extra alignment every day, or 1% sometimes if I don't have capacity for 5%. So being kind of humble in that way, like, oh, I don't expect to be 100% different tomorrow. I can expect to be 0.5%, a little more, maybe expanded in my alignment, or more present for my kids in my center. So practices that are small instead of big things. I have one of them is surrounding myself with images of ancestry and elements of the earth that are here for me. And also I have even friends that are passed on, that are showing up for me and helping me align. So in my circle of, my kind of energetic circle, I when I remember, and it takes me 1 minute. So it's not a big thing I do for 2 hours, but it's more like, when I remember, I can call these elements and people to be with me, witness me coming back to my center, and it's gentle processes for the body in that way. And this kind of work, it has to be gentle. We could be more aggressive in the bike or in the, in the workout, more gentle in this work. A lot of gentleness.
Yes. Thank you so much. I would spread it, your message and your words, and we need this right now. Thank you so much, and all the best for you. And we hope we will read your book very soon. Gentle.
In a few years.
It would be wonderful.
Thank you so much, Daniela, for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Right. All the best for you. Bye-bye, Magdalena.
Bye. Thank you. All the best.